Okay, so today I'm going to give a short presentation on the structure of the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane, also commonly known as the plasma lemma, is present in all eukaryotic cells. And based on its molecular organization, it's been named as fluid mosaic model. Now, what do we understand by fluid mosaic model? When we say fluid, we mean that the components of the plasma membrane are not static, but they are dynamic, which means they are constantly shifting in position. And the word mosaic refers to a sort of an arrangement in which the small pieces are present on a framework or a scaffold. This is labeled mosaic because the proteins, they are present within the plasma membrane, giving the appearance of a mosaic. So we'll just get into that right now. We have three basic components of the plasma membrane. These are number one, the phospholipids, right? And then we have number two, that is cholesterol. Cholesterol, as you would know, is a stereolipid. And the third component are the proteins. These are the three basic components of the plasma membrane. Now, first, we're going to look at the structure of the phospholipids. Well, the phospholipids, these are amphipathic molecules. Now, what do we mean by amphipathic? We mean over here I've drawn single molecule of a phospholipid. And when I say amphipathic, what I mean to say is that one part is hydrophilic and the other part is hydrophobic. So this here that we see, this rounded head, this is the hydrophilic region of the phospholipid. This hydrophilic region is also called the polar head. It contains a phosphate group, and the word hydrophilic means that it is water attracting. The second part, that is the lower part of the phospholipid over here, this consists of two fatty acid long chains, and this is the hydrophobic part. Hydrophobic means it is water repelling. And also it is the non-polar region of the phospholipid. So these are the two parts of the phospholipid molecule, the polar hydrophilic head and the non-polar hydrophobic fatty acid tails. And this phospholipid molecule is therefore known as the amphipathic molecule. Now, what is the arrangement of the phospholipids within the plasma membrane? Well, the arrangement is such that these polar heads, they will be present on the outer aspect of the plasma membrane because they are the hydrophilic ends, whereas these fatty acid tail regions are hydrophobic, so they will be present in the inner aspect. And these phospholipid molecules are present in the form of a lipid bilayer. So you can see over here, I'm drawing two layers of phospholipid molecules. And these two layers collectively form a structure which is known as lipid bilayer. This is the basic composition of the plasma membrane. And they're arranged like this to give the advantage of stability. So this is how the phospholipid molecules are mostly stable, is that their tails will be facing towards each other in the middle. This is the hydrophobic region, and the polar hydrophilic heads will be directed outside towards the extracellular matrix and inwards towards the intracellular matrix. So this is the arrangement of the phospholipids. Now we come to the second component, which is the cholesterol. Now, cholesterol is embedded within this phospholipid bilayer structure at varying densities in different locations. And this cholesterol, I just want to label it, has a very important function in the plasma membrane. It has the function of restricting the movement of the other components of plasma membrane. So although we say this is a fluid structure, but the fluidity is not so random because at several points, cholesterol, it restricts the movement of proteins within the lipid bilayer. So you can say the cholesterol acts like the glue within the lipid bilayer. Then let's come to the third component of this plasma membrane. The third component are the proteins. Now, proteins, they are present in large quantities within the plasma membrane. They may make up approximately 50%, that is half of the mass or weight of the plasma membrane. And they can be categorized depending upon whether or not they are embedded within this plasma membrane or attached to the periphery. So here I'm going to draw a protein which is embedded within the plasma membrane, and it is embedded completely within this plasma membrane. You can see it is embedded completely within the plasma membrane. So this protein is known as the integral protein. It's also called the transmembrane protein. There are some proteins which are not completely embedded within the plasma membrane, but they are actually attached to the integral proteins, like this one I've drawn here. They might be attached to the inner aspect of the integral protein, or they might be attached to the outer aspect of the integral protein. In both cases, they are known as the peripheral protein. The peripheral proteins are more in number on this aspect, which is the cytoplasmic surface. So other than these integral proteins, another variation of the integral protein itself is when this protein passes through the lipid bilayer multiple times and it forms a structure, or you could say this winding structure, which is passing through and through this lipid bilayer several times. In that case, this integral protein will be called a multipass protein. So multipass proteins are the integral proteins which pass several times through the lipid bilayer from one side to the other side. They're simply known as multipass proteins. So these are the components which are present, which are making up the plasma membrane. Keep this in mind that the plasma membrane might be present as the boundary of the cell itself, and it is also present as the boundary of the cytoplasmic organelles. So the organelles, which are the small organs, literally that's what it means, within the cytoplasm, at their peripheral boundary, the lipid bilayer is also present. Another structure to note is the glycocalyx. Now, what is the glycocalyx? The glycocalyx is simply, you could see at the face, which is the extracellular face of the lipid bilayer, there are some sugar moieties, that is the carbohydrate or sugar chains, which would be attached to the phospholipids, and some of these sugar moieties, they would be attached to the proteins. These sugar moieties or sugar chains, which are called glycolipids, and now you could say the glycoproteins respectively, they form the glycocalyx on the outer aspect of the plasma membrane. So this here in purple that I've drawn for you are the sugar moieties attached to the phospholipids and proteins, collectively known as glycocalyx. So this sums up the basic structure of the plasma membrane. This is the schematic drawing, which just represents a brief description of the molecular organization of the plasma membrane. Okay, so thank you.